In a live chat a couple days ago, Brokeloader said he had a package to send to me of some old reloading things that he had stumbled across that he had no use for. I'll find out what they are. I have no idea what he sent. I hope this isn't too embarrassing because I'm filming it. Brokeloader's been in quite a few of my live streams. I appreciate the support. We'll take a look at what we have. Oh, we got a note. Hey Curtis, Brokeloader here. I bought a bullet lot of 308 bullets, and at the bottom of the box was 222 brass, which I heard you say you had one. I punched out the live primers with universal decapping die. I didn't know how the post office would react to them. They probably wouldn't like it too much. They need to be cleaned, and they need a loving rifle to be shot out of. Also, there was 222 hand load set. I think 2 pieces or maybe 3 are missing. You may have already, or may find cheap in your voyages. You have an awesome channel, and he enjoys watching. Keep up the good work. Well, thank you. Wow, 222 brass. That's awesome. Let's see what we got. Oh, wow, there's several boxes, too. Let's see what we have. Oh, my goodness. Oh, I dumped those. It's a box of factory Remington. 222 brass. Some that's Hornady Frontier labeled. I don't know what head stamp these will have. Sometimes I think they have Hornady head stamps, sometimes I think they're others. Well, there's the box is filled with Remington Peters. Wow, that's a full box of 222 brass there. What do we have here? Another Frontier Hornady box. This is actually more Remington. There is some Frontier stamped. That's interesting. That's a head stamp that I don't have in 222, or I didn't have previously. I do now. That's good looking brass too. That'll clean up nice. I'll shoot them for sure. I will shoot them for sure. Oh my goodness, it's a whole box of triple deuce brass. Look at that, another box of the... That's a nice vintage Remington box. It's always interesting to see when other people write their load data on old boxes. H380 25 grains with a Hornady 50 SX, the expanding bullet. Says that some of that brass was reamed. IMR 3031 in some of them as well. Pretty traditional powder choices for 222. Yep, more Frontier brass, some more Remington Peters brass. Oh wow. Another box. Look at that. Look at that. Wow, I really appreciate the brass. That's awesome. Very cool. And then what do we got here? Oh, he said a reloading set. He didn't say what kind of reloading set in that note. I know what this is. It came from an Army and Navy store for $19.99 originally. This is a Target Model Zero Error Lee loader set. Now these are really nice because they come with a lot of pieces that the standard Lee loader sets don't come with. These typically come with a priming tool. They typically come with a case length trimmer. They typically come with a resizing die that also has a neck reaming feature. I have several of these in a lot of calibers. Let's see here. Thought there might be some stuff missing, but we'll see what it has. Hey, look at this. These instructions are from a set of Pacific dies. These wouldn't be for this particular item, but this is original here. This is an original charge table for 222 Remington from a Lee loader set. This same load card is typically included in the Target Model Zero Error sets, the same as the regular Lee loader sets. They usually are the same ones. Sometimes you can tell the vintage of the sets by which powder measure is specified. The very earliest ones would be for the aluminum powder measures, and they would have sizes that relate typically to shotgun gauges or special sizes, like there's 12, 12M, 16, 20. I've got a chart that shows all those. If anyone is interested, I've compiled a cross-reference chart of the old dippers to the red and black that are calibrated in cubic inches versus the new yellow ones that are in cubic centimeters. But this would indicate that this set was a vintage that probably had either a red or a black scoop that would be calibrated in cubic inches, and it is indeed a red scoop. It's the red 108 scoop, which is the one that's specified on the load card, so that's appropriate for the set. And as I said, these come with a little more items than the typical Lee loader set would come with. So here's the typical decapping base that would be in any Lee loader set. And then this here is a priming rod and a knockout rod. This one is missing the decapping rod, which is not a problem. I have several of those. Normally there would be a deburring tool here, which is the typical Lee deburring tool that has a slit in it that cuts, and then they typically would have a primer pocket tool in this hole here. I have spares of those so I can make the set complete. And the priming tool would go here. And I have a few spares of those. I think I may even have a spare that has the appropriate shell holder for 222, which is the same as 222. The 221 Fireball uses the same one. 223 obviously, 222 Magnum, they all use the same shell holder, and it would be on that old style threaded one. And then of course here's your case holder. These older ones didn't have a stub on them, and then they evolved into having a round 1/4 inch shank, and then later they evolved into having a 1/4 inch hex to put in a power tool. But that's the case holder, and then of course this is the trimmer. So the difference on the Target model zero error loaders is the loader has built into it a micrometer setting, and what you do is you can set your seating depth with the micrometer, the same as some of the modern micrometer bullet seating dies, and you also have a coarse adjustment here. So what you can do is with a bullet establish your headspace and then use this to dial a space off and how much you are, how far you're seating bullet. The other thing you can do is the first sizing of the round of the brass, you can tap it in and resize the case. You set this on 0 per the instructions, which this one's pretty close to 0. It's screwed down a little bit. But if we set this on the 0 setup, one more turn it looks like. There's the 0 setup. So now we're at 0. You can hammer the case in, and then this is a neck reamer. And when it's knocked in there, it sizes it to the appropriate outside diameter, and then you can neck ream with this tool. And it simply goes in there, and these are honed to a very precise fit. You can see that's you know, the lubrication causes some damping, and this is a neck reaming tool, and of course you only have to do this one time. And what that does is it gives you a consistent case neck thickness. These produce very good ammo, especially in a bolt gun. You can, you know, do the sizing and the reaming on the first firing, and then you'll have very consistent brass. So yeah, these are nice sets. They're nice to have, and I appreciate you sending this to me, Brokeloader. The important parts are here. When I evaluate a zero error target model loader, I evaluate mostly if the reamer is there and if everything is complete with the sizing die. The other parts are all, you know, if you're looking at for collectability, you'd like to have the ones that are appropriate, but for usability, having the reamer is the main thing, and then a good body is the second. So I also like it when they come with the original documentation. That's nice. Now this one isn't too obsolete in powder. Some of these and these sets would have dated to the late 60s typically. So, you know, this one, the copyright on this particular charge card is 1969. That doesn't necessarily mean that this particular set was from 1969. It could have been a little later, 70, 72, 73. You know, there was a transition period where Lee Custom Engineering, where Richard Lee and his partner had some legal challenges, and that's when Richard Lee actually started up Lee Precision and started making products that were not in the traditional Lee Custom Engineering product line. That's when the bullet mold started to come around, the casting things, and moving forward. And then there were some royalty stipulations and some various things, and then many of the original products Richard Lee ended up getting the manufacturing rights back to later. There's a couple of old books that have documentation of that whole evolution of the Lee Precision company that are pretty interesting to read, and if anyone wants to learn about those things, let me know and I'll tell you where to find the information. But this is a original instruction booklet for a zero error set. It outlines all the parts just like I did, and shows the procedure here. You know, gets into the neck reaming portion with the micrometer set at 0, ream the neck of the case. And it says important, see neck reaming. The important note is don't turn the reamer backwards. Chips will break the reamer blades. That's standard reamer discipline, so most people would already know that. So you've got all the setup here, shows using the case trimmer. Now here, they are saying they evolved to have a stub. Originally, Lee had this spinner available for 58 cents to mount the case holder and a power tool. So this is a nice set. I appreciate you forwarding this on to me, Brokeloader. I'll add it to my Lee collection. I have a lot of Target model loader sets. I probably have, oh, I don't know. I'd have to count. Maybe, I know Georgia Boy has asked me to do a video on which ones I have. So it's really nice to add this one to the collection. I will perhaps use the Reamer at some point. They're really a interesting piece of history for the hand loading hobby. You can make some really good ammo with these. It's a top-notch reaming setup because the way the inside of the die is machined and honed to very precisely fit this shaft. You know, if you didn't have a precision fit between the shaft and the bore of the sizing die, the neck reaming would do you no good because you would be off center. Perhaps you could be out of axis, you know, in one dimension. You could be out of concentricity. There's a lot of things that could be wrong if this were not machined well, and from what I've read, they went through great pains with this particular die, and these fetched a premium price in the day versus the standard reloader. And even some tools that are for presses, these were more expensive than even regular threaded dies for reloading presses, because that was a process that was took some honing to get that fit just right. I'm not 100% sure what equipment that they honed the bores of these with. My guess would be is that they use something like a Sun and Hone or something of that nature to hone them to a precision fit to the Reamer shaft. But boy, I really do appreciate the zero error target model loader. I find these to be very gratifying in my collection, so I'm very pleased to have it. The box is in very nice shape on this one, so it's definitely something that I'll treasure. I appreciate you sending it, and I love the old price tags. 1999 and 1970, that was a fair amount of change. Expensive piece of reloading tool. In the brass, boy, I appreciate that. 222 brass isn't as plentiful as it once was. I'll tell you what, I'll put a break in the video here, and since see if with my camera set up as I have it now, I'd like to show the rifle that it'll shoot in, since you know, the note specifically says, that it needs a loving rifle to be shot out of. I can provide that loving rifle. That's not a problem at all. I have the perfect candidate for this. I'll tell you what I'll do here. I'll turn off the camera for just a minute, and then I will go upstairs and I will grab the loving rifle that these will be fired out of, and I'll give you guys a quick look at it, and this will inspire me to get that 222 in a video right quick, so I'll be right back. Stop recording. GoPro, stop recording. Okay, I'm back. Once again, in the note, Brokeloader sent me a nice package with several boxes of 222 Remington brass and a nice note and a Lee Zero Error target model loading set for 222 Remington. I really appreciate that, but here in the note he specifically says that the 222 brass needs a loving rifle to be shot out of, so I can provide that. And what I've brought down to show everyone here is, this is my 222 Remington. This is, I know my camera view here is terrible, but I'm set up here, so I'm going to leave it. This is a Remington 788 in 222 Remington. These are marvelous rifles in my estimation. I looked for a nice one for a long time. I stumbled across this one at a gun show. I'm very pleased with it. I've shot, maybe the equivalent of a box of factory ammo through it. The scope is a vintage Valor 3-9 by 40, image moving. I'm assuming that means second focal plane. Nitrogen filled, number 20249. This is the first time I'd seen a Valor scope. It looks similar to a lot of scopes of the era. I don't know if I had that held in the right place. It says Valor 3-9 by 40, image moving, nitrogen filled. Once again, it's a Remington 788. You can see the roll mark on it there. These are they were meant to be a budget rifle, but it turns out that they're good shooters. This one is in quite nice shape. I don't see a lot of wear on the bolt One of the interesting things you'll notice about a 788 is it is a rear lockup. It has interrupted thread lugs on the rear of the bolt that locks up in the receiver rather than having on the front of the bolt like a 700 or other styles. Dimensionally, the receiver tube is very similar to a 700. These are a very simple rifle. They're known to have a rather fast lock time, you know, from the trigger pull to the strike or drop. They're very quick. Very typical rifle of the day with screws already in it for a receiver sight if you chose to do it. This one has had the rear sight taken off. The camera shut off. It's saying that very typical of a 788 or other rifles of the era, it has screws for a receiver sight. This one has had the front sight removed for scope clearance, and it still has the factory front sight present. So I could find a rear sight relatively easily on eBay. They're plentiful. This has a two-piece, I'm guessing, Weaver bases. I used to remember the number of the bases that went on there. I can't remember if it's 75 and 76. It's a typical two-piece Weaver set, and those look like Weaver rings. There is one screw missing out of these inexpensive Weaver rings, so what I will probably do is put a one-piece base on it. You have to be a little careful about that with 788s though. The ejection port is rather small, and one of the things that target shooters like about 788s is, since they're a very slim single stack magazine feed, the slot that's milled in the bottom of the receiver tube is very small in comparison to a 700, which makes the receiver very rigid. So they're looked upon as being accurate due to that. They don't have nearly as much of the receiver tube milled away for a floor plate and a mag. So it's a little bit different execution of the tube style receiver than a 700. One of the negatives of a 788 is that the locking lugs being at the rear of the receiver, it subjects the whole bolt to compression during firing. Now in a small cartridge like 222, that wouldn't be an issue, but there is some concern that in the 308 chambered 788s that there can be some compression of the bolt that leads to a little bit of change in the headspace dimension when the rifle is fired, particularly with things that are rather stout. I have noticed some case growth in my I have a 308 788. I have noticed a little bit of case growth. I don't know if that's attributed to the brass that I run or if it is a little bit of bolt compression. The rifle feels like it locks up plenty tight, so there could be some truth to what they say, whether you could get some compression of the bolt in a, like say a light caliber like a 222. That is of no concern. But like I said, I probably will replace the I may keep the scope bases, but I certainly will put a different set of rings on there. I have a loopholed Vari X3 that I plan to put on this to give it a little bit better glass. This scope is a little challenging to shoot. The first time I took it out, I thought it was really bad, and then I cleaned the front lens, and it helped a lot. So it's certainly a budget-minded scope from back in the day. This rifle's time frame would be, late 60s, early 70s would be very typical. There are a couple of generations of 788s. Later on, they went to recessing that steel floor plate into the wood. You'll find them both ways. There are two, I think maybe three different basic trigger assemblies. So there is some variations in the model over its production run. They were roughly late 60s to early 80s. There's a lot of legends about these rifles. There are some people that say that they outshoot 700s, even though their price point was supposedly going to be lower than 700s, and that that caused challenges. I don't know how much of that is truth. I don't know how much of it is the whimsy of gun writers of the day. There seems to be a lot of things that are legends that come up from the gun writers about a lot of different things in the gun industry. My only experience with 788s personally is I do have one in 308, and I have this one, and like I said, I've run the equivalent of maybe a box of ammo through this one. Say it's got a light Monte Carlo stock. I've shot the 308 a fair amount. When I bought it, it had a I'm going to knock my light off like I did in the other live stream. My 308 has a kitchen gunsmith trigger job on it that was just atrocious, and it had a very light pull, but it was very unpredictable, and it also did not have enough sear engagement. And after I was a little disgusted pulling a shot out of a very nice group, I closed the bolt rather aggressively for the next shot, and the rifle slam fired, and I said, okay, well, that's just not safe. So I took the rifle out of service. I ordered a replacement Timney trigger for it, and I put the Timney in it, and I've shot it a little bit since then, but not a ton. I've probably got, oh, I don't know, 120 rounds through that rifle total. It shows some promise. I've not run a lot of variety of bullets. I've forgotten what the rifling twist is in the 308. It did like 155 grain bullets. So, but this, I think the 222 here is going to have, and I believe this one's 1 in, I think this one's 1 in 14 or 1 in 16 if I remember right. I'd have to look at my notes. I don't remember those things as I used to. I used to be able to retain those details forever, but it's kind of funny because when you don't have the rifles and you read the specs and you want them, it's easy to remember all the specs, but then once you have the rifle in your hand, you tend to, the details kind of get washed away a little bit. But this is the loving rifle that will use that brass. And Brokeloader, I really appreciate you sending the brass and sending that Lee Zero Error target model loader. That's something that I really appreciate, and I'll have to make sure I get this rifle, get the scope upgraded and get it out to the range here right quick so you can see it in action. All indications are is that it should work okay. I plan to do not only light 223 bullets in it, but also some cast. So we'll see how it all goes. And once again, thanks for sending the brass and the reloading set, and I appreciate that. I will talk to everyone later. Thanks.